The distress beacon had been transmitting for 3 days before anyone found it. Lieutenant Hyunwoo stood in the airlock of his scout ship, watching the abandoned Vralith facility grow larger through the viewport. The moon of Kepler 440c was a dead rock, chosen specifically because nobody ever came here. That should have been his first warning. Captain Daeho's voice crackled through the comm system. Hyunwoo, what do you see? The facility looks abandoned, sir. No power signatures, no movement. But that beacon is definitely human tech. Hyunwoo checked his scanner again. His hands were steady, but something felt wrong. 3 years of war had taught him to trust his instincts. Proceed with caution. I'm keeping the Eternal Dawn in position. If anything goes wrong, we'll pull you out. Hyunwoo and his team of 4 Marines moved through the facility's outer doors. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors, running on backup power. The walls were covered in strange markings, the kind the Vralith used for their military installations. But there was something else. Dark stains on the floor that led deeper inside. Sir, you need to see this, one of the Marines called out. Her name was Bora, and she was the toughest soldier Hyunwoo had ever served with. But her voice was shaking now. They found the first body in what looked like a medical room. A human woman, still wearing the torn remains of a UHSF uniform. Her name tag read Lieutenant Park. Hyunwoo didn't recognize her, but that didn't matter. She was one of them. And she had died badly. Keep moving, Hyunwoo ordered, though his throat felt tight. We need to secure the facility. But there were more bodies. Dozens of them. All women. All wearing the same uniforms from the UHSF medical frigate Mercy's Hand. The ship that had vanished 6 months ago during a routine supply run. The Vralith had claimed they knew nothing about it. That had been a lie. The facility had been a prison, and then it had become something worse. The rooms they passed showed signs of medical equipment, restraints, and things Hyunwoo couldn't identify and didn't want to. The Vralith had experimented on these women, tortured them, and when they were done, they had executed every single one. Hyunwoo found her in the last cell. Commander Guan, his older sister, she was a decorated field surgeon, one of the best in the fleet. She had always been the strong one, the one who patched everyone else up and told them they would be okay. Now she was gone, her body left carelessly on the cold floor. But she had left a message. Carved into the metal wall with something sharp, probably a piece of broken equipment. The letters were rough and uneven, made by hands that were injured and tired. We stayed human. Make them remember. Hyunwoo read those words 3 times before his knees gave out. Bora caught him, held him up while he tried to breathe. Around them, the other Marines were finding their own reasons to grieve. A sister, a friend, a mentor. 47 women who had been prisoners of war, who should have been protected by every galactic law. Get me Captain Daeho, Hyunwoo said finally. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Tell him we found them. Tell him what they did. The news spread across human space faster than any military transmission. Admiral Minho, Supreme Commander of all human forces, received the report within hours. The images, the evidence, the final messages carved into walls by dying women. He sat alone in his office on the command station above Earth and watched the footage 3 times. Then he started making calls by the next morning. Every human in the fleet knew. Every colonist on every world knew. The Galactic Council released a statement calling for calm and promising to investigate. The Vralith Empire denied everything, calling it enemy propaganda. They suggested the humans had staged the whole thing. That was their last mistake. Admiral. Minho convened an emergency meeting in the war room of Station Command. Captain Daeho attended via hologram from his ship. General Salmon of the Marine Corps flew in from the Mars training facility. Intelligence Director Ji-ho arrived from the listening posts near Vralith space. And Dr. Yoonji came up from her laboratory on Europa, looking like she hadn't slept in days. They killed our people, General Soman said. Her voice was cold and hard. Not in combat, not in a fair fight. They tortured them and executed them. Every woman on that ship. The Galactic Council wants us to wait for their investigation. Intelligence Director Ji-ho reported. They're asking us to show restraint. To let them handle this through diplomatic channels. How long? Admiral Minho asked. Their investigation could take years, and even then, the Vralith have allies on the council. The votes might not go our way. Captain Deho spoke up from his hologram. My crew is ready, sir. Every ship in the fleet is ready. We've been fighting with one hand tied behind our backs for 3 years, following their rules, respecting their laws. And look what it got us. Admiral Minho turned to Dr. Yunji. She was young for someone in her position, barely 40, but she was the smartest person in the room. She ran the Theoretical Weapons Division, a department that most humans didn't even know existed. Doctor, how long would it take to activate the special projects? Dr. Yunji looked around the table. You mean all of them? All of them. She pulled up a holographic display, showing files with names that sounded like nightmares. Project Erebus, the Gutenberg Initiative, Cascade Protocol. Designs that humanity had been developing since they first encountered alien life 50 years ago. Weapons that they had built and then quietly buried, hoping they would never need them. We could begin implementation within 48 hours, Dr. Yunji said. But sir, once we start this, there's no going back. The galaxy will see what we're really capable of. They'll see what we've been hiding, Good Admiral Minho said. I want them to see. I want the Vralith to understand what they've done. And I want every other species out there to understand what happens when you hurt humans and think we'll just accept it. What about the Galactic Council? Jiho asked. They'll try to stop us. They can try. But they should ask themselves a question first. Why do they think humanity climbed to the top of the food chain on our own planet? Why do they think we survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed billions of our own people? It wasn't because we were peaceful. It wasn't because we played by rules. Admiral Minho stood up, and everyone in the room stood with him. We survived because when something threatened us, we became the bigger threat. We learned how to be more dangerous than anything else out there. We just forgot that lesson for a while, because we wanted to be civilized. He brought up the image of Commander Giwan's final message. She said, make them remember. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to remind the Vralith why predators don't hunt humans. We're going to show them why every species on Earth that tried to compete with us went extinct.
Oh.
General Soman smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. What are your orders, sir? Activate Reckoning Protocol. All special projects are greenlit. Every weapon we've been holding back, every piece of technology we've kept secret, every terrible idea we've ever had about how to win a war, we use it all. Admiral Minho looked at each of them in turn. The Vralith wanted to see what humans do when we're angry. They're about to find out what we do when we're done being civilized. Captain Deho's hologram flickered. Sir, I request permission to take the first strike. Granted. Hyunwoo found his sister in that facility. I think he deserves to be there when we make the Vralith pay for what they did. The meeting ended, and the officers dispersed to their commands. Within hours, human fleets across the galaxy began moving into position. Supply ships started distributing weapons that most crews had never seen before. And in laboratories and military installations across human space, scientists and engineers began activating systems that had been built years ago, and left waiting for a day they hoped would never come. That day had arrived, on the moon of Kepler 4-4 to see. Hyunwoo stood one last time in the cell where his sister had died. He read her message again, committing every rough letter to memory. Then he walked out, sealed the facility, and marked it as a memorial site. 47 women were buried here now. Their graves would serve as a reminder of why humanity had stopped holding back, as his ship lifted off from the dead moon. Hunhua looked down at the facility one last time. I'm sorry we couldn't save you, he whispered. But we'll make sure everyone remembers what happened here, and we'll make sure it never happens again. Behind him, the Eternal Dawn and a dozen other warships broke orbit, heading toward Viralith's space. The war had been going on for 3 years. It was about to become something very different. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity was going to war. The real war. And the Vralith were going to learn why that was a terrible mistake. The Vralith Forward Operating Base Thatanine was one of the most heavily defended military installations in their empire. It sat in orbit around a gas giant, protected by 3 defense platforms, 2 cruiser squadrons, and enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Intelligence reports suggested this was where the women from the Mercy's hand had first been taken. Captain Deho had requested this target personally. The Eternal Dawn approached with its weapons cold. No missiles armed, no energy weapons charging. The Verlith defenders watched on their scanners and probably thought the humans were coming to negotiate. They were wrong. Launch Package 1, Deho ordered calmly. From the cargo bay of the Eternal Dawn, 20 metal rods ejected into space. Each one was 6 meters long and made of tungsten, a metal so dense that a small piece weighed as much as a grown man. They had no engines, no guidance systems, just metal rods falling toward the base below. The Vralith must have laughed when they saw them coming. Simple metal projectiles, something from the primitive ages of warfare. Their shields could stop energy weapons. Their point defense could shoot down missiles. What were metal rods going to do? The first rod hit at 17 kilometers per second. At that speed, the kinetic energy was incredible. The rod punched through the station's shields like they weren't there, through the armor plating, through 3 decks, and exploded with the force of a tactical nuclear weapon. But there was no radiation. No energy signature. Just pure physics turning motion into destruction. The second rod hit before the Verlith could even process what happened to them. Then the third. Then all 20 in quick succession. Each impact released enough energy to vaporize everything nearby. The base didn't just break apart. It simply ceased to exist, torn into fragments by forces that no shield could stop. All personnel on that base are gone, the sensor officer reported. Complete destruction. Deho nodded slowly. Good, mark it. Send the data to Fleet Command. Let everyone know that kinetic strikes are effective against Vralith shielding. Vralith fleet in orbit scrambled to respond. 6 cruisers and 24 fighters burned hard toward the Eternal Dawn. Their weapons were hot, their shields at maximum. They were coming for revenge. Lieutenant Hyunwoo, you're cleared to engage, Deho said over the com. Hyunwoo sat in the cockpit of his fighter, surrounded by 11 other pilots from his squadron. They had been waiting for this. Their fighters looked normal from the outside, but inside they carried something special. Something that Dr. Yoonji's team had built based on theoretical physics that the Vralith hadn't even imagined yet. Gutenberg drives active, Hyunwoo reported. All fighters show green. Vralith fighters came in fast, firing their plasma weapons in coordinated volleys. Their tactics were good, their pilots experienced. They had been fighting humans for 3 years and knew how human fighters moved. Then, Hyunwoo's fighter simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The Vralith fighters scattered, searching for it. Their scanners showed nothing. Then Hyunwoo appeared 3 kilometers behind them, weapons firing. 2 Vralith fighters exploded before their pilots even knew they were under attack. The Gutenberg drive created micro-wormholes, tiny tears in space that a fighter could slip through. Range was limited to a few kilometers, and the power consumption was enormous. But in a dogfight, it meant human fighters could teleport. They didn't have to outfly the enemy. They just had to outthink them. Hyunwoo's squadron used the drives over and over, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield. The Vralith pilots went from confident to confused to terrified in the span of minutes. Every time they lined up a shot, the human fighter would vanish and appear somewhere else. Every time they thought they were safe, weapons fire came from impossible angles. Within 10 minutes, the entire Vralith fighter screen was gone. The cruisers tried to retreat, but human fighters appeared around them like ghosts, hitting their engines, their weapons, their sensors. The cruisers died slowly, piece by piece, unable to land a single shot on targets that refused to stay in one place. All hostile vessels destroyed, Hyunwoo reported. His voice was calm, professional. But Deho could hear something underneath. Satisfaction, justice being served. Turn to the carrier, Deho ordered. Well done. But the demonstration wasn't over yet. Intelligence Director Jiho had been busy while the fighting happened. His teams had spent months infiltrating Vralith communication networks, planting backdoors and access codes. Now they use them. Every Vralith military frequency lit up at once. Every command center, every ship, every base received the same broadcast. Images from the prison facility on Kepler 44 to see the bodies, the evidence of torture. The final messages carved into walls by dying women, all of it in perfect clarity. And then a message translated into the Vralith language. You taught us to stop holding back. Thank you for the lesson. After the images came something else. Historical footage from Earth, atomic bombs falling on cities, chemical weapons in trenches, biological warfare, the horrors of human history when humans had fought each other with every terrible weapon they could imagine, wars that killed hundreds of millions, technologies designed for nothing but maximum death. The message was clear. Humans knew horror. They had lived it. They had inflicted it on themselves for thousands of years before they finally learned to stop. And now the Vralith had reminded them of all those old lessons. Sir, we're getting reports from across Vralith space, Jiho said, appearing on the bridge hologram. The broadcast is causing chaos. Their civilian population is seeing the prison facility images. They're seeing what their military did. Good, Deho said. Let them see. Let them understand what their leaders started. 3 days later, General Summon's fleet arrived at the Vralith colony world of Draken 7. It was a minor world. Mostly agricultural, but it hosted a significant military garrison. Traditional tactics would require a long ground campaign. With heavy casualties on both sides, Salmon had other plans. The troop transports didn't carry soldiers. They carried cargo containers, millions of them. Each container held thousands of small drones, barely the size of a human fist. When the containers opened, the drones poured out like a swarm of insects. Each drone was simple. It had a camera, a small computer, and facial recognition software. It carried a single shaped charge explosive, just enough to kill one person at close range. The drones spread across the colony world in waves, scanning every face they saw against a database of military personnel. Vralith civilians watched in confusion as the drones flew past them, ignoring them completely. The drones were looking for soldiers, and when they found them, they acted with mechanical precision. The shaped charge would detonate. Designed to kill the target instantly without harming anyone nearby, the Vralith garrison tried to fight back. They shot down thousands of drones, but there were millions more. The drones learned from each loss, adapting their approach. They came at night. They hid in buildings. They waited in ambush, and they never stopped. Within 48 hours, the entire military garrison was gone. 5,000 Vralith soldiers dead, killed by machines that hunted them specifically. The civilian population was completely untouched. Not a single civilian casualty. The precision was terrifying. Sir, the garrison commander is requesting terms of surrender, one of Summon's officers reported. Tell him there's nobody left to surrender, Salmon said coldly. Tell him the drones completed their mission. The civilians are free to go about their lives. We have no quarrel with them. The news from Draken 7 spread even faster than the images from the prison facility. The Vralith military began to understand that they couldn't hide. Their bases weren't safe. Their defenses didn't matter. The humans had weapons that could find individual soldiers in a crowd and kill them while leaving everyone else unharmed. More terrifying was what it implied. If humans could build drones that precise, what else could they build? If they could program machines to kill only military targets, they could just as easily program them to kill everyone. They were choosing to be precise, choosing to spare civilians, but that choice could change. Admiral Minho watched the reports from his office above Earth. 3 strikes, 3 complete victories, and the Vralith were already panicking. But this was just the beginning. Dr. Yunji, how many special projects are ready for deployment? 17 are fully operational, sir. Another 30 are in final testing. We can have them ready within a week. The Vralith homeworld, what's its current defense status? Heavily protected. Their entire home fleet is in orbit. Thousands of defense platforms. It would take our entire fleet to assault it, and we take massive casualties. We're not going to assault it, Minho said. We're going to seal it. Activate Project Erebus. I want the Vralith homeworld completely cut off from the rest of their empire. Dr. Yunji hesitated. Sir, Erebus is designed to be permanent. Once we deploy it, there's no reversing it. The Vralith will be trapped in their own system. No, that's the point. Let them sit there and think about what they did. Let them watch as we take apart the rest of their empire, piece by piece. And let every other species in the galaxy see that when you hurt humans, you don't just lose the war. You lose everything. Across human space, more fleets were moving. More weapons were being distributed. More classified projects were coming online. The Vralith had started this war 3 years ago, thinking humans were just another species to conquer. Now they were learning the truth. Humans weren't just another species. They were the species that had conquered their own planet before reaching the stars. They were the species that had fought each other for thousands of years and learned every possible way to win. They had just been playing nice, following galactic rules, trying to fit in with the civilized species. But civilization was a choice, and the Vralith had made them choose differently. Lieutenant Hyun-woo returned to his quarters after the battle. He sat on his bunk and pulled out a photo of his sister Ji-won, taken years ago when she graduated from medical school. She was smiling in the picture, proud and happy. Ready to help people, he placed the photo on his small desk next to his flight helmet. We're keeping our promise, he said quietly. Everyone's going to remember. Outside his window, the eternal dawn and the rest of the human fleet prepared to jump to their next target. There were dozens more Vralith bases to destroy. Hundreds more targets on the list. The war was just beginning, and humanity was done holding back. The Galactic Council chamber was built to inspire peace. It sat on a neutral space station, orbiting a star that belonged to no single species. Representatives from 43 different civilizations gathered here to debate laws and settle disputes. For 200 years, the Council had maintained order across known space. Now that order was falling apart, Chancellor Victor of the Pelion Union called the emergency session to order. He was old even by his species standards, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that could look in different directions at once. Those eyes were all focused on the holographic display showing Admiral Minho's ship approaching the station. This council demands an explanation, Victor began, his voice carrying across the chamber. In the past 2 weeks, human forces have destroyed 17 Vralith military installations, blockaded for colony worlds, and deployed weapons that violate multiple galactic conventions. The Vralith Empire has filed formal complaints and demanded immediate sanctions against humanity. The Vralith representative, Ambassador Kren, stood from his seat. He was large for his species, with dark scales and eyes that showed no emotion. The humans have gone mad with bloodlust. They attack our bases without warning. They murder our soldiers with machines. They broadcast propaganda across our communication networks. This is not war. This is terrorism. Terrorism. The voice came from the entrance to the chamber. Admiral Minho walked in, not in dress uniform, but in his working combat grays. Behind him came Dr. Yunji, carrying a data case. I came here to show you terrorism. Real terrorism. Minho walked to the center of the chamber, where speakers traditionally stood. He didn't ask for permission. He simply activated the holographic projector and loaded the files from Dr. Yunji's case. The images appeared 3 meters tall, impossible to ignore. The prison facility on Kepler 44-C, the bodies of 47 women, the medical equipment used for experiments, the restraints, the blood, and finally, the messages carved into walls by dying hands. Commander Juan was a field surgeon, Minho said quietly, pointing to one of the images. She spent 8 years saving lives. Vralith lives, human lives. It didn't matter to her. She took an oath to heal people. He moved to another image. Lieutenant Park was a medical assistant, 23 years old. She wanted to open a clinic on her home colony after the war. Another image. Captain Kim ran the medical ship. Mother of 2 children back on Earth, Minho showed all 47 women, naming each one, telling their stories. The council chamber was silent. Even Ambassador Kren had stopped talking. These women were prisoners of war, Minho continued, protected by every galactic law, every convention, every rule that this council claims to uphold. The Vralith took them, tortured them, experimented on them like animals, and when they were done, they executed them. He turned to face Ambassador Kren directly. You want to talk about terrorism? Let's talk about what your people did to unarmed medical personnel, Rogue Faction Kren said, but his voice was weaker now. Not sanctioned by our government? A rogue faction? Dr. Yunji stepped forward, pulling up more data. We've found 16 other sites like this one. 16 more prisons where you held human captives. We have evidence of systematic torture, medical experimentation, and executions across all of them. This wasn't rogue. This was policy. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species demanded humanity accept council arbitration. Others called for sanctions against the Vralith. A few said nothing, just watched with calculating eyes. Chancellor Victor banged his gavel. Order. This council will have order. He turned to Minho. Admiral, these crimes are horrific, but your response has been disproportionate. You've deployed weapons that threaten the balance of galactic power. You've ignored council authority. You must cease these actions immediately and submit to arbitration. No, Minho said simply. The word hung in the air like a bomb. Species didn't say no to the Galactic Council. That's not how civilization worked. No, Victor repeated. Admiral, you cannot simply refuse council jurisdiction. Watch me, Minho replied. For 3 years we fought your way. With your rules, we treated prisoners well. We followed the conventions. We believed in your galactic civilization. And while we did that, the Vralith were torturing our people to death. Where was the council then? Where was this demand for justice when our women were dying in those cells? Ambassador Hyjin, humanity's diplomatic representative, stood up. She was younger than most ambassadors, barely 50, but she had a presence that filled the room. The council had 3 years to prevent this. You had 6 months after the Mercy's hand disappeared to find out what happened. You did nothing. You told us to be patient, to trust the system. Well, we're done trusting. This is unacceptable, declared Ambassador Shen of the Teluvian Empire. His species controlled 12 star systems and had one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. If every species acted on their own authority, civilization would collapse. You must accept council oversight. Or what? Minho asked. You'll sanction us? Blockade our space? Go ahead and try. But ask yourself first, are you willing to fight humanity to protect the Vralith? Because that's what it would take to stop us now. The chamber fell silent again. Every species there had seen the reports. The kinetic strikes that nothing could stop. The fighters that could teleport. The drones that could hunt individual targets. And those were just the weapons humanity had revealed. The rumors suggested they had much worse in reserve. Ambassador Reen of the North Collective stood slowly. His species had fought a border war with the Vralith 20 years ago and barely survived. Perhaps, he said carefully, the question is not whether humanity's response is proportionate. Perhaps the question is whether the Vralith should have expected anything else after what they did. Thank you, Hyjin said, nodding to him. Let me be clear about something. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're informing you of what's going to happen. The Vralith Empire will answer for their crimes. Every base that held human prisoners will be destroyed. Every officer who authorized or participated in torture will face trial. Every system that supported these actions will pay reparations. And if the Council opposes this, Victor asked, then the Council will learn what the Vralith are learning. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We're the species that fought world wars and nuclear exchanges and still thrived. We've been trying to fit into your civilization, but we don't need it to survive. We never did. Ambassador Kren finally found his voice again. This is madness. If we don't stop them now, they'll become the dominant power in the galaxy. They'll impose their will on everyone, will we? Minho turned to face him. Let me tell you what humanity wants, Ambassador. We want our people to be safe. We want the conventions to actually mean something. We want species to keep their word when they sign treaties. That's it. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want everyone to understand that there are consequences for breaking the rules. He pulled up another hologram, this one showing a tactical map of Ralith space. See these systems? 12 Ralith colonies. We could have bombed them from orbit. We could have killed millions of civilians. But we didn't. We blockaded them, cut off their military supplies, and offered humanitarian aid to civilians. We've taken thousands of Ralith soldiers prisoner, and every single one of them is being treated according to your precious conventions. We're not trying to commit genocide, Dr. Yunji added. We're not trying to wipe out a species. We're trying to dismantle a military machine that thought it could torture our people without consequences. There's a difference. Chancellor Victor looked around the chamber, reading the mood. The council was divided. Some species feared humanity's power. Others secretly approved of their actions. The Vralus allies were silent, calculating whether defending them was worth making an enemy of humanity. This council will take a recess, Victor announced. We will reconvene in 3 days to vote on a resolution. As the session ended and species filed out of the chamber, small groups began forming in the corridors. Ambassadors whispered to each other, making deals and calculations. The galaxy was changing. Everyone knew it. Ambassador Haijin found herself surrounded by representatives from smaller species. Ones who had always lived in fear of larger empires. Is it true? One of them asked quietly. The weapons you've shown, are those all you have? Haijin smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. No, those are just the ones we felt comfortable showing you. The rest, we're keeping in reserve. Just in case of what? In case someone else decides to test us. In case someone thinks humanity will go back to being easy prey once this is over. We won't. This is who we are now. Back on the command station above Earth, Admiral Minho reviewed reports from across the fleet. The war was going well, better than expected. Verlith resistance was crumbling. Their home fleet was trapped behind Project Erebus, cut off from their colonies. Their military was scattered and demoralized, but there was still one problem. We've identified 812 human prisoners still in Vralith custody, Intelligence Director Jiho reported, scattered across their remaining territory. Some are from ships captured early in the war. Others are pilots who got shot down during combat operations. Can we get them out? Not without alerting the Vralith. If they realize we're coming for the prisoners, they might execute them out of spite. Minho closed his eyes. More hostages. More people depending on him to make the right choice. What about a simultaneous strike? Hit all the prison sites at once? Possible, but risky. We'd need perfect timing and a lot of luck. Start planning it anyway. I want options on my desk within 24 hours. While they talked, another report came in. The Viralith had launched a retaliatory strike on the human colony world New Sol. They used chemical weapons on civilian population centers. 20,000 dead in the first wave. Most of them children and elderly who couldn't evacuate in time. Minho read the report twice, his hands shaking. The Vralith had just made their final mistake. They had crossed the last line, broken the last rule that might have saved them. Get me the fleet commanders, he said quietly. All of them. And get me Dr. Yunji. Tell her to prepare every special project we have. Every single one. Jiho looked at him carefully. Sir, are you sure? They attacked our civilians. They used chemical weapons on families. On children? Minho's voice was still quiet, but there was something in it that made Jiho step back. I was trying to be restrained. I was trying to prove that humanity could be better than our worst instincts. But they just proved that restraint is wasted on them. What are your orders? We save our people first. Then we show the Virlith what total war actually means. They wanted to see humanity's true power. Minho stood up, activating the communication system that would broadcast to every human ship, every base, every colony. They're about to get their wish. Across human space, military personnel stopped what they were doing and listened. Admiral Minho's message was simple and direct. The Vralith had attacked civilians. The gloves were off. Every weapon, every classified project, Every terrible idea humanity had ever had about winning wars, it was all approved for use. The war was about to become something the galaxy had never witnessed before. Lieutenant Commander Sunho specialized in impossible missions. He had served in special operations for 12 years, leading teams into situations where everything had to go perfectly or everyone died. He had never failed a mission, but this one was different. This one had 812 lives depending on him. Getting everything exactly right, the briefing room was packed with the best operators humanity had. Each team would hit one prison facility simultaneously. They had 1 hour to reach their targets, neutralize all guards, and extract the prisoners before the Vralith realized what was happening. The weapon is biological, Dr. Yunji explained, showing them a small canister. Nanites smaller than blood cells. When released into an air system, they spread rapidly. They identify targets by DNA and neural patterns. For Vralith biology, they induce complete neural paralysis within 30 seconds. For humans, they do absolutely nothing. How long does the paralysis last? One operator asked. 12 hours? Long enough for extraction and escape. After that, the nanites break down naturally, and the Vralith recover with no permanent damage. Sunho studied the mission clock. They had been planning this for 3 days, ever since the attack on New Seoul. Every team knew their target, knew the layout, knew where the prisoners were being held. They had practiced the timing 100 times in simulations. "Sir, what if there are civilian Vralith at the facilities?" another operator asked. "The nanites don't discriminate between military and civilian Vralith. Anyone in the area will be paralyzed," Dr. Yunji said. "But once you extract our people, the civilians will wake up unharmed. We're not here to kill bystanders. We're here to get our people home." Admiral Minho appeared on the hologram. "This operation is critical. We have one chance to do this before the Vralith realize we have this capability. Every human prisoner in Vralith space needs to come home today. After that, we move to the next phase." "What's the next phase, sir?" Sunho asked. "Making sure the Vralith Empire can never threaten anyone again. But first we save our people. Good luck, all of you." The teams deployed across Vralith space simultaneously. Sunho's target was a military prison on the industrial world of Raykar 3. Intelligence said it held 42 human prisoners, mostly pilots who had been shot down in combat. The facility was underground, built into old mining tunnels. His team approached in a stealth transport, using every trick humanity had learned to avoid detection. They landed 3 kilometers from the prison and moved in on foot, carrying the nanite canisters and extraction equipment. "Target in sight," Sunho whispered into his com. "Beginning approach." They reached the facility's air intake system without being detected. One of his team members, a specialist named Bora, carefully attached the canister and activated it. Through their sealed helmets, they couldn't see the nanites dispersing. But sensors confirmed the release was successful. 30 seconds, Sunho counted down. Inside the facility, Vralith guards would be starting to feel strange. Their legs would stop working. They would try to call for help but find their voices failing. Then they would collapse, fully conscious but completely unable to move. Time. Move in. They breached the facility through a side entrance. Inside, Vralith guards lay on the floor, their eyes wide with terror, but their bodies frozen. Sunho's team moved past them quickly, following the layout to the cell blocks. The prisoners were in bad shape. Thin, injured, some barely conscious, but they were alive. Sunho's team moved quickly, breaking open cells and helping prisoners to their feet. "Can you walk?" Sunho asked a young pilot whose name tag read, Lieutenant Taiyang. "I can try," Taiyang said, his voice rough from disuse. "How many of you are there? How did you get past the guards?" "Later. Right now we need to move." They evacuated all 42 prisoners in 18 minutes. As they loaded everyone onto the transport, Sunho looked back at the facility. The guards would wake up in a few hours to find empty cells and no sign of how it happened. Let them wonder. Across Vralith space, 17 other teams were completing the same mission. By the time the sun rose on Vralith Prime, every human prisoner had been extracted. 812 people saved in perfect synchronization. All teams report success. Intelligence Director Jiho announced to Admiral Minho. 0 casualties, 0 personnel left behind. Every prisoner is en route to human space. Excellent, Minho said. Now we move to Phase 2. Activate Project Erebus. Dr. Yunji had been waiting for this order. Project Erebus was her masterwork, the weapon that would redefine how humanity fought wars. It was based on a simple but terrifying concept: self-replicating mines. The first wave of mines was deployed in the asteroid fields around key Vralith systems. Each mine was small, barely a meter across, but it contained nanofabricators that could consume any available matter: rock, ice, metal, and use it to build more mines. 1 mine became 2. 2 became 4. 4 became 8. Within days, billions of mines filled the asteroid fields. Within weeks, they had consumed every loose rock and formed an impenetrable shell around each system. The mines were programmed to identify Vralith ship signatures. Any attempt to leave the system would result in thousands of mines converging on the ship, tearing it apart through coordinated strikes. The Vralith home fleet is completely trapped, Jiho reported. Their largest military concentration confined to their home system. They have supplies to last for months, but they can't leave. And their colony worlds? We're deploying the minefields around each one now. Give us 2 weeks, and every major Vralith system will be sealed. Captain Deho's fleet moved from system to system, not invading but blockading. His ships would arrive, deploy the mines, and move on. The Vralith were being systematically cut off from each other, their empire fragmenting into isolated systems. But the psychological impact was even worse than the physical blockade. The Vralith could see the mines on their scanners. They could watch as the asteroid fields around their worlds were consumed and reformed into weapons. They could calculate that there were now trillions of mines surrounding their systems, each one waiting to destroy anything that tried to escape. They were in prison. Their entire empire was one giant cage, and humanity held the key. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Vralith colony worlds," Jiho reported. "They're asking for humanitarian aid and offering to cooperate with occupation forces. Accept the surrenders," Admiral Minho ordered. "Send relief supplies immediately. Medical teams, food, water, whatever they need, and make sure the civilian populations are treated well. This isn't about hurting ordinary Vralith. It's about dismantling their military machine." General Summon's Marines began landing on surrendered worlds. But instead of conquerors, they came as peacekeepers. Medical supplies were distributed. Food shipments arrived. Human engineers helped repair infrastructure damaged during the blockade. The Vralith civilians, who had been told humans were monsters, found themselves being helped by the very species they had been at war with. The propaganda war shifted. Images of human Marines helping Vralith children, human doctors treating Vralith civilians, human engineers rebuilding Vralith infrastructure. The message was clear. Humanity had no quarrel with ordinary people. Their war was with the military and political leadership that had authorized atrocities. "We've located the Vralith High Command," Intelligence Director Jiho announced. "They're in a bunker complex on Vralith Prime, underneath the capital city. Heavy fortification, but we can get to them." "Do it," Admiral Minho ordered. "I want them alive. They need to face trial for what they did." General Soman personally led the raid. Her team used sonic weapons to stun the guards, then breached the bunker in a perfectly executed assault. Inside, they found the Vralith High Command, 12 generals and admirals who had planned the war and authorized the torture of human prisoners. Among them was Grand Marshal Throck, the military leader who had specifically ordered the execution of human POWs. He stood defiantly as human Marines secured the room. "And you think this is victory?" Throck said. "You're savages. You'll never be civilized, no matter how many wars you win." Salman walked up to him slowly. She was a full head shorter than the Vralith Marshal, but her presence was commanding. "Civilized. You tortured unarmed medical personnel. You executed prisoners of war. You used chemical weapons on civilians. And you call us savages? You're proving my point. Look at what you've done to our empire. You've trapped entire worlds. You've deployed weapons that violate every galactic convention. We deployed weapons that you couldn't stop, Salman corrected. There's a difference. And yes, we trapped your worlds. But we're feeding them. We're helping them. Your own people are surrendering because they'd rather be under human protection than under your command. That should tell you something. Throck was silent. You're going to face trial, Salman continued. A fair trial with evidence and testimony. The galaxy will see exactly what you did and exactly what happened as a result. And then you'll spend the rest of your life in prison, thinking about the thousands of people who died because of your decisions. The prisoners were transported to a secure facility on the human colony world of Titan. Admiral, Minho wanted the trials to be public, to be documented, to be completely transparent. The Galactic Council was invited to send observers. Media from across the galaxy was allowed access. The trials took 3 weeks. Each charge was presented with meticulous evidence. Survivors testified. Documents were presented. The Viralith defendants were given counsel and allowed to present their defense. Everything was done according to proper legal procedure. The verdicts were unanimous. Guilty of war crimes. Guilty of crimes against sapient beings. Guilty of violating the conventions of war. The sentences were life imprisonment without possibility of parole. We could have executed them, Admiral Minho said during his closing statement. We wanted to. Every human who lost someone in those prison camps wanted them dead. But we chose not to. Because we're not trying to be like them. We're trying to be better. They'll live long lives in comfortable but secure prisons. And every day they'll remember what they did and what it cost their people. As the trials concluded, Ambassador Hajin addressed the Galactic Council one final time. The Viralith military leadership has been tried and convicted. Their empire has been dismantled. Their military machine is broken. But the Viralith people themselves are not our enemies. We're working with colony governments to establish new leadership, civilian governments that represent their people rather than military juntas. What will humanity demand in reparations? Chancellor Victor asked. We're not asking for money or territory, Hijin replied. We're asking for reform. Galactic military law needs to be strengthened. The conventions need enforcement mechanisms. War crimes need consequences that matter. And every species needs to understand that prisoners of war are protected always. Without exception, you speak as if humanity will enforce these new laws, Ambassador Shen of the Tuluvian Empire observed. If necessary, yes, Haijin said bluntly. We tried trusting the system. The system failed. So now we're the backup plan. Anyone who violates the conventions, anyone who tortures prisoners, anyone who uses weapons of mass destruction on civilians, they'll answer to us. We don't want to be the galaxy's police. But if that's what it takes to make the rules mean something, then that's what we'll be. The council chamber was silent. Every species there understood what had just happened. Humanity had declared itself the enforcer of galactic law. Not through conquest or domination, but through demonstrated capability and willingness to act. The war was over. The Viralith Empire was gone, replaced by smaller independent colonies under transitional governments. Every human prisoner had come home. The convicted war criminals were imprisoned, and the galaxy had learned a lesson it would not forget. Lieutenant Yunwu stood at the memorial on Kepler 4 for it to see. The facility where his sister had died was now a protected site, transformed from a place of horror into a place of remembrance. 47 statues stood in a semicircle, each one carved from local stone. Each statue showed a woman in her UHSF uniform. And beneath each statue was carved her name and her final message. Commander Juan's statue stood in the center. The carving showed her as Hunwu remembered her, strong and confident, ready to help anyone who needed it. Her final message was carved large enough to read from across the memorial. We stayed human. Make them remember. We did. Hyunwoo said quietly, placing flowers at the base of the statue. Everyone remembers now. Behind him, other families were arriving for the dedication ceremony. Parents, siblings, children, all coming to honor the women who had died here. Admiral Minho had declared this day a memorial holiday across all human space. Schools taught about what happened. News programs showed documentaries. Everyone learned the story so it would never be forgotten. Captain Daeho gave the main speech at the ceremony. He was retiring from active service after 30 years in the fleet. His final duty was to ensure the next generation understood what the war had been about. These women were medical personnel, Daeho said, his voice carrying across the memorial grounds. They took an oath to save lives. They treated wounded soldiers from both sides without discrimination. They were captured while trying to help people, and they were tortured and killed for it. He paused, looking at the statues. We avenged them. We dismantled the empire that did this to them. We made sure the people responsible faced justice. But more importantly, we made sure that no one will ever forget what happened here. This memorial stands as a reminder, not just of what the Vralith did, but of what we promised ourselves. We promised that we would stay human, even in our revenge. That we would be better than our worst instincts. And we kept that promise. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. 47 seconds, one for each woman. Then families laid flowers and said their goodbyes. The memorial would stand forever, protected by treaty and guarded by automated defenses. No one would ever destroy this place. No one would ever forget, across the galaxy, the Galactic Council reconvened to discuss the new reality. The Vralith Empire was gone, replaced by dozens of independent colony governments. The Vralith homeworld had been released from its minefield blockade after agreeing to disarmament and oversight. The transition was messy, but progressing. Ambassador Hyjin sat in her new position as humanity's permanent council representative. The council had offered humanity a seat months ago, but only now was she taking it. She wanted the war completely finished first. The council recognizes Ambassador Hyjin of humanity, Chancellor Victor announced. You have the floor. Thank you, Chancellor, Hyjin said, standing. I want to address the concern that many species have expressed. They fear that humanity has become too powerful, too willing to use force. They worry about what comes next. She activated a holographic display showing the former Vralith territories. In the 6 months since the war ended, human forces have withdrawn from all but 3 former Vralith worlds. Those 3 are hosting transition governments at the request of local populations. We're not occupying them. We're helping them rebuild. But your weapons remain deployed, Ambassador Shen noted. The minefields, the kinetic strike capability, the biological agents. You've shown the galaxy what you're capable of, but you haven't dismantled any of it. No, we haven't, Hyjin agreed. And we won't. But let me be clear about something.